Hello and welcome to the Happy Little Futures podcast. As always, let's start with a nice deep breath in and out. Fantastic. So let's begin. So it was recently half term here, and it was the first week in ages that my husband was out the house all day. Not just all day, but he left just as the kids got up, and he was back hours after the kids had gone to bed. So it was extremely long days for me. And I had 3 kids all week, which is wonderful, and I always look forward to the holidays. I'm one of those people that is always like, I don't want to give them back, rather than the other way round, which is probably evident by the fact that I was thinking of homeschooling for so long. So it was very exciting to be able to have half term. It was a little less exciting that I wasn't going to have any help all day with them, which I'm used to, but we haven't had that sort of situation for a while because of a variety of reasons. And on top of that, it was the rocky week of my cycle. So I was a bit more on high alert than normal, shall we say, as far as mood swings and stuff like that go. So it was a rough week for everything to fall, basically. And it's, on reflection, it's got me thinking about the little things that I did and that we did as a family and that my eldest in particular did, to sort of work through it. Because on weeks like that, the opportunity for self-care feels almost impossible. And on top of that, I've got quite a few friends that have got newborns now, and again, speaking to them, it's sort of like, it's that realization that we all talk about self-care and we all go, oh, it's really hard, but we don't always talk about the types of self-care that you can do in those moments where you are feeling like you're drowning a little bit, where you have got another human completely reliable on you 100% of the time. Like in the early days, if you're breastfeeding in particular, you are just, well, I used to just call myself a milk machine. I just used to say I just feel like a cow all the time because I'm just constantly being milked. And and it's very hard to feel safe enough in those moments to leave the child so that you can have that self-care. It's very hard to find time and presence of mind to not be feeling a bit selfish in those situations, depending on your predisposition to feeling selfish as well. Like, I think I've got quite a high predisposition to that, and it's very hard to, when your world is sort of like turned upside down with that sudden 24/7 reliance on you. It can be extremely difficult to recognise what the important moments that you can anchor on to for that bit of self-care are. So I thought I'd go through a little bit of what I did that week, just to see if it helps you at home to recognise when you possibly are needing that self-care in those situations where you're very, very busy, but also to sort of help you think when you are in those situations. And it might not necessarily be that it's half term and the kids are around all the time. It might be that you've got a big assignment on at work. It might be that you're in the middle of exams at university. It could be anything, but we all have times when self-care feels impossible. And for me personally, and hopefully by the end of this for you, it's the little things that make a big difference. So like I said, it was a very busy week. It was busy in the sense that there was lots of people around in our very small house. And in the fact that we all wanted to do lots of stuff, we've got people to see. My husband wasn't here, so it was all sort of like managed by me mentally. And the mental load, as we've spoken about in the past, can be extremely difficult to manage in those situations. And I'd got work on a Friday night as well, which I don't normally have. So there was lots of little things that were sort of here, there and everywhere. And in those moments, it can be very difficult, like I've said, to sort of find that space, find that mental clarity, and find that anchor almost to help just lift you, to ground you enough to keep going. So I quite often, even at the start of these podcasts, we take a breath together. At the end of the podcast, we take a breath together. And I quite often do that as a practice throughout my day. Just reconnecting with my breath, reconnecting with my body, helping myself to just reground in that moment and check in to see where I'm at. And I say check in because over time, I have practiced just mindful awareness of my breath. And that's a fantastic thing for you to do, just to notice just where you feel your breath most and what your breath is like in that moment. Whether it's heavy or not heavy, deep or shallow, and things like that, fast or slow. And I find now, by checking in with my breath, not only can I recognize a bit more where my body's at in terms of more anxious, more stressed, unable to reground, but also by then taking deeper breaths and being more present with my breath in those moments, I can then reground myself and sort of almost latch on to that sense of calm that I can get from monitoring my breath. And so for me, checking in with my breath regularly is an extremely important part of being mindful. It's an extremely important part of my self-care during the day. It's an extremely important part of just helping me to reground and reconnect. And not only with myself, but also with the kids. They see me doing this. And I will go on to explain how modelling this from my point of view has then supported me in those moments over half term where I was a bit more stressed and possibly a bit more ratty. So finding your anchor is really important. Trying to monitor your breath and be mindful of your breath throughout your day, even when you're not stressed, and even when it's not a time of heightened emotion or higher demand from others and stuff like that. That is a really foundational thing in helping to use these anchors, helping to figure out where your body's at. It could be something as simple as just rubbing your finger and thumb together, and when you're in a more grounded place, maybe you notice more the texture, the feeling of your thumb and finger. If you're not, then maybe actually you find it harder initially and you really have to work a bit more. Or it could be that you rub your finger and thumb together harder than normal if you're a bit more stressed. So noticing those things, I think, is really important. Practicing those things regularly in your day, even when not in a state of heightened emotion, is really important. It's kind of that muscle memory that we've spoken about in the past. It's the practicing scales for an instrument. It's like doing your exercises and your stretches, and that 1 mile start with preparing for a marathon. It's all of those things. So that for me was fundamental and carried me through in many ways, including times when, like I said, I was stressed and overwhelmed at times, and it doesn't help when there's lots of toys on the floor and stuff like that, does it? But in those moments, at one point, my eldest recognised where I was at, and she did some deep breaths, and I then copied her. And her modelling what I do, where I take deep breaths if she's stressed and just hold her, by her modelling that to me back, helped me to then do that as well. So I was having a bit of a this the house, and we need to get to bed, and we need to do this, or whatever it was, I can't remember. And yeah, she stood there and she started breathing deeply as I was sort of going, look, we need to do blah 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 blah. And in that moment, I recognised what she was doing. I started breathing deep, and I gave her a big hug, and she gave me one back. And she modelled the behaviour that I do for her. And it doesn't mean that she always copies that behaviour. It doesn't mean that always works for her in those moments when I'm breathing deep, because I want her to recognise that that's something she can do to help herself. When I'm breathing deep to sort of help support her in noticing breath a bit more, because sometimes it's hard when you're in that state of heightened emotion to notice your breath. So by seeing it visually, hearing it sort of audibly from someone else, it can be very helpful. And she did that back for me. That was super. She also then offered to tidy up downstairs whilst I put the other two to bed, and that was also super. She'd recognised that the mess that the house had got into that day, that was adding to my stressed outness. And that's something, again, that I've spoken to them about in the past, the fact that, like, I've spoken to her in particular because when her bedroom's a mess, she can't focus as well. She struggles to relax as easily as normal. So we've had a few conversations around that, and I think she recognised that the house was a mess, and that was probably contributing. So that was really kind of her. And as a friend said, it was nice to see she said it's sometimes nice to have your parenting reflected and done to you. And whilst I wouldn't expect that of my kids, she was right. It was nice in that moment to have that sort of, that reflected back. So, like I said, breath and modelling to children can be really, really helpful. And especially when it comes back and it gets modelled back to you. Really, really, really helpful. So before I move on, I'm going to just thank our sponsor, Rowan Fox Clothing. And Rowan Fox is a sustainable clothing brand with wildlife-inspired designs fit for the whole family. And they have some wonderful, wonderful designs and clothes. So if you head to rowanfox.com or Rowan Fox on Facebook and Instagram, you can find them over there. And yeah, have a look at some of their fantastic clothing. So the other thing that I recognised that's taken me a very, very long time to get used to doing, because I'm not very good at doing this, but it's something that I'm now trying to sort of pat myself on the back for learning to do and teaching myself, is to not overfill your day. So by not overfilling your day, this is obviously more difficult in different ways. So if it's that you've got an assignment, clearly you need to be working on that assignment, and that's what you need to do. But you could not overfill your day by batch cooking some meals beforehand, making it so that it's a jar of pasta sauce instead of making a pasta sauce for tea, making it so that it's sandwiches and toast throughout the day, and yet you just have to go easy on yourself in that way. You could do it so that it's not, maybe you're working from home instead of in the office if you have that luxury, or other little things like that. Just really not pushing yourself. Maybe that day that you've got all that stuff on, maybe you don't need to do the washing that day. Maybe actually you can save that load and deal with it tomorrow. And sometimes that's okay, and sometimes that is needed. So I just have a sip of tea. So in my instance, personally, I have in the past had a big tendency to go, right, we're doing this morning and this afternoon, and then we get in at tea time, eat tea, and it's bed. And that's great in many ways because we get to do so many things and everything's great. However, I burn out within days of the holidays starting by doing that. And I have the the other tendency, if I'm not overfilling my days, to feel guilty for not doing lots of stuff. So this now sort of comes in two parts, really. It's the recognizing that we don't have to do it all. So recognizing that in my instance, I don't have to see a friend in the morning and then go for a walk in the afternoon. I don't have to sort of go out for the whole day, every single day of the holidays. It's recognizing that actually it's okay to have some time at home, either in the garden or, I mean, they just played, actually. They were quite happy playing. Have some time at home doing that, and then do something for the other half of the day. It's okay to sort of time block that time so that it's not an overwhelming, we've got the whole day to fill. It's sort of like, this half of the day we're going to do this, and this half of the day we're going to do that. It's okay to do that. And that sort of okay to do that leads on to my second point tied up in this, which is letting go of self-expectation. I think, especially nowadays, we place everything on our own shoulders. There is a tendency to go, I've got to do this, I've got to cook from scratch, I've got to do a load of washing a day, I've got to load the dishwasher and make sure that's done every single day, I've got to then have a sparkling clean house all the time, there has to be no toys around every single night, it all has to be put away properly, I have to make sure that my kids have been out in the fresh air and then have not watched any telly and done X, Y, and Z and all sorts of stuff. And I have to do all of that whilst also working full-time or part-time or managing my own business. And that is a near-on impossibility. And I think letting go of that self-expectation of having to do it all, giving yourself a little bit of compassion and recognizing that, yes, things are harder at the moment. No, you don't have to get that load of washing done every single day, even though you know in your mind that actually everything will run smoother in the long run if you do that load of washing every single day. That doesn't mean that it is something you have to do every single day. It doesn't mean that future you has the right to be angry at past you for not doing that load of washing every single day. If past you needed to let go of it in that moment, if past you needed to be kind to yourself and say, it's okay, you've got 3 kids around, you've been out this morning, you've sorted out this, that and the other this afternoon, whilst they've played, they are happy, they are fed, they've eaten food, and everyone is alive. And you are exhausted. And I mean, I've got a lot of other background stuff going on at the moment, which is both mentally and physically draining. And I am having to think that way a lot more. And it's driving me mad in many ways, but having that self-forgiveness, letting go of that self-expectation is vital. And I mean, that's why the podcast hasn't come out in a few weeks, because putting that pressure on myself when I was looking after 3 kids and running around and having very, very long days, and my husband was having long days and we were both on our knees, it just hasn't fitted in to the day, hasn't fitted into the week. And I've had to go, you know what, as much as I love doing this right now, that's not what's important. Right now, I need to be in a good place to go and get my kids this afternoon and be able to drive the car without feeling so tired that I want to fall asleep and stuff like that. And that makes a big difference, to recognise that you can't do it all and to let go of that expectation on yourself. And whilst it's frustrating, whilst it can leave you feeling fed up, that, I mean, especially in the newborn days where you sit there and you're nap trapped and you're staring around at a house where there's stuff everywhere and you just want to shower, but your baby's actually sleeping for the first time in ages. having that sort of presence of mind to go, it is okay that this is the situation right now, and what is important is having those newborn cuddles. It is being that comfort for my baby in this moment. And I think that kind of brings me on to my final thing that really helped me through with the self-care. And I do believe that these things are self-care. They're not your traditional going to the gym, having a bath, having a shower, reading a book, writing a story, doing all of those sorts of things. They're not the traditional ways. It's very much when you are overwhelmed and overloaded and you are feeling like you can't, the self-care that you can do is these things. So we've had reconnecting with your anchor, whatever it is. We've had not overdoing and overfilling a day and letting go of that self-expectation. And I think in general, the main one that can be possibly the biggest bit of self-care that I find in these moments, especially if I'm feeling down on top of everything else, which, I mean, at that particular point in my cycle over half term, I felt a bit down. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And I think the most important part is to find the present moment. It's to be mindful in that moment. And sometimes that is as simple as having that sip of coffee and just recognizing the warmth of the coffee on your lips, the warmth of the mug in your hands, the taste as it goes into your mouth, and that warmth that can spread down into your body. And even if you only manage that one sip, that can be an incredibly powerful thing to anchor onto, an incredibly powerful form of self-care. Not just going on autopilot and glugging, just taking that one sip to slow down. Likewise, taking that one breath to slow down. Or one of my favourite things is to recognise that my mind is racing and that my body is exhausted. And it's to just stop and watch the kids. And watch the kids in whatever they're doing. Just be present with them in that moment. Presently observing without judgment that moment. And sometimes, yes, you want to go, oh, just be careful, don't do that. But sometimes just sort of checking yourself and going, if I hadn't slowed down, I wouldn't see what they were doing. Obviously, if it's unsafe and they need you, don't do that. Always make sure that they're safe. But just recognising, actually, yeah, they are happy. They are okay in this moment. They are present in this moment, and learn from them. Learn from that innocence that they possess and their ability to be present in any moment. Really, really watch and learn and have them model to you the behaviours that we can easily grow out of as life gets busy and we get overrun with stuff and anxiety takes over. Let them model it to you, because that is an incredible gift. And if you're nap trapped, take that moment to feel your baby's breath on your body, to just listen to them breathing, watch the little twitches in their face. Just take that moment to be present and give yourself permission to be in that moment without judgment and just enjoying life for where you are and where you're at, because that is a beautiful gift. It's a beautiful, beautiful gift. So with that, I am going to love you and leave you. And I'm going to hope that has given you a little bit of food for thought. And if you are in one of those overwhelmed, overworked, newborn or not stages, just take this moment now, this next breath. Take this for yourself and let this be your anchor in this moment. So we're going to take a deep breath in and release. Fantastic. And have a lovely day.